How is the Temple Mount considered a gateway or portal to God? This question baffled scholars for many years. Believe this or not, but much of what the nation of Israel is trying to recover is not just the foundation stone on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, but ultimately a portal to the heavens. That's right, what much of the nation of Israel is trying to redeem is a portal to the God of Israel, not just the foundation stone or temple. In the Bible, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem is portrayed as a uniquely sacred place and is often seen as a gateway or portal to God. Here are some biblical references and concepts that highlight its significance as a divine meeting place. Mount Moriah in the binding of Isaac. The Temple Mount, also known as Mount Moriah, is traditionally identified as the location where Abraham was commanded by God to sacrifice his son Isaac, shown in Genesis 22 verse 2. This event established the mountain as a place of ultimate faith and connection to God, marking it as a space for divine human encounters. Next, let's examine Jacob's ladder. In Genesis 28:12, when Jacob dreamed of a ladder connecting heaven and earth, with angels ascending and descending, he refers to the place as the gate of heaven in Genesis 28:17. Although this dream may not have occurred directly on the Temple Mount, it has been associated with the idea of holy sites in Jerusalem being links to the divine realm where heaven meets the earth. In fact, Scripture reveals many occasions where angels appeared on the Temple Mount. In 2 Samuel 24:15-16, David sinned by numbering Israel, and God sent a plague through an angel of the Lord. That exact spot, the threshing floor, is where David buys the land and builds an altar. This later also becomes the site of Solomon's temple. Later, we also see another encounter with an angel. When King Hezekiah prays at the temple for deliverance from Assyria, God answers directly. That night, the angel of the Lord went out and put to death 185,000 in the Assyrian camp, shown in 2 Kings 19:35. Thus, the Temple Mount is not only where God hears prayers, but also the command center of divine intervention in history, showing it as the portal of appeal to God, and the angels act as God's direct response. Next, let's see how the temple is God's dwelling place on earth. When King Solomon built the first temple on the Temple Mount, he dedicated it as a place where God's name shall be there forever, in 1 Kings 9:3. The temple is described as God's earthly dwelling place, where the divine presence, or Shekinah, rests, especially in the Holy of Holies. This concept reinforced the idea of the Temple Mount as a place where heaven and earth meet. Even without the Shekinah, the Temple Mount is still holy because God chose it. But when the Shekinah is present, the mountain becomes more than a portal. It becomes the active throne room of God on earth, according to Ezekiel 43:1-7, where God's glory returns by the eastern gate to dwell forever to meet with mankind. Next, let's visit the Holy of Holies as a portal. In the Holy of Holies, the innermost sanctum of the temple, the Ark of the Covenant was placed. Only the high priest could enter this area, and only on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, to atone for the sins of Israel revealed in Leviticus 16. This chamber was considered the most direct point of contact with God, emphasizing the Temple Mount's role as a portal or gateway to divine presence. Even according to the Bible and rabbinic literature, the Temple Mount is a reconstitution of the Garden of Eden, the very axis of creation, the dwelling place of God's presence, and the place from which life and blessing flow to the world. Eden was the first sanctuary where God walked with man and created mankind. Eden, however, was lost through sin, but the Temple Mount preserves its holiness and serves as the main portal back to that original communion with God and mankind. Next, a house of prayer for all nations. In Isaiah 56:7, the temple is called a house of prayer for all peoples. This description highlights the Temple Mount as a universal place of access to God, suggesting that it serves as a spiritual gateway not only for Israel but for all who seek communion with the divine. Let's next examine the heaven-earth connection. In Jewish tradition, the Temple Mount is considered the navel of the world, or the point of connection between heaven and earth. Isaiah 2:2-3 prophesies that the Temple Mount would one day draw all nations to worship, reflecting the idea that it is a unique meeting point between humanity and God. Lastly, let's examine the prophetic vision of God's presence. Many prophets, including Ezekiel and Isaiah, had visions of God's presence or glory emanating from the Temple Mount. In Ezekiel's vision of a future temple in Ezekiel chapters 40 to 48, the mountain becomes a source of divine life, with waters flowing from it to renew the earth. This vision reinforces the idea of the Temple Mount as a spiritual axis from which God's presence extends to the world. These biblical passages present the Temple Mount as a space that connects the earthly and divine, symbolizing God's presence among humanity and providing a focal point for worship, reverence, and divine communion. The Temple Mount's status as a gateway to God, therefore, is deeply rooted in its role as a physical location where people could come closest to encountering the divine presence. The temple has always served as the main portal or gateway to the God of Israel in the heavens,